Welcome to the 531, where we debate a top 5 list on a particular subject, further discuss it down to a top 3, and then eventually settle on a top 1. Now after this beat, we'll get to today's subject. Fans, welcome back for another week of the 531, where we take our top 5 list on a particular subject, vote them down to a top 3, debate that top 3 down to a top 1, and guys, this is our 1-year episode. And for our 1-year episode, our 1 year was September 29th. This episode is coming out afterwards, but we're celebrating today, and we are celebrating with the top 5 tag teams of all time. Now, Dave, you said this was a topic that you and AJ had early on that you think kicked off this podcast. Tell us a little about that.
So we basically, this is back in the days where we were just recording stuff and we were practicing. And I think we were talking about indie wrestling with an edge still at this point.
Oh, Jesus.
And, we were trying to do like very typical, whatever was going on in the wrestling world conversations. And then I came up with the idea that one day, hey, why don't we have a discussion about like this all-time great tag team, top 5. And then I remember I made you listen to it like the next day because I said, hey, I had an idea. I want you to try this. And you said to me, you texted me, I like this. This can create some debate. That's how it started off with the top 5 kind of discussion. Then we all got together, started brainstorming, and that's when you came up with eventually, maybe after that even, of the whole 531 concept. That's when you came up with the name and how you would go about, debating from the top 5, the top 3 to the final 1.
Yeah, because I thought if we just did a top 5 list, like everybody does a top 5 list, a top 3 list, a top 1. What if we did a little bit of all those? You get a little discussion, you get a little debate. You kind of find out what you have in common with other people, like where the hard lines are, where something you guys might like, something that I might hate, things like that.
Absolutely. It's an interesting list, especially when we start adding people to these discussions now, too. We get some picks that are like, man, that's awesome. That's a great old school pick. Or we get some kind of weird pick where it's like, who the hell came up with that idea?
Yeah, we're looking at you, Randy, for a couple weeks there. But then he's also come up with a couple lists that have really knocked it out of the park. We shit on Randy a lot, but he is a loyal listener. Same with author Jake St. John, Jesse from New Hampshire, Scott from Voluntown, Zach St. John, my brother. We're pretty sure AJ listens. I mean, he's not here very often. Like,
I thought you were going to do like a Shane Douglas promo style there, like put all these people over and then go, and you can all kiss my ass. This is the Extreme Working Fans podcast.
Oh no, we're at a point now where like we're starting to grow on YouTube. We're starting to grow in users. We got to be nice to everybody, I think. We are also selling shirts at this point. Guys, if you want a shirt, workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Let us know your size. $20 a shirt, $25 for a shirt and a sticker. We're going big, guys. Year 2, we've got the Working Fans Podcast Presents on Tuesday, and for the first few episodes, we're going to be airing Tape Trader's Guide to the 90s. If you're familiar with the WrestleTopia guys out of Tennessee, JD Sloan, Justin Desnid, however you know him, very good guy. We're going to start sharing his podcast with you because we just want to see it get to a bigger audience. And Dave, we have talked so long already about just kind of, we're dick dancing on 1 year right now. Like, we're patting ourselves on our own back. We're tooting our own horns. But a lot of
grab ass with each other. Look out now.
I know. And I mean, it's been a hard-working year. We joke on the air, but I think in this year we've definitely come a long way. Like, we used to get
survived a pandemic, brother.
I know. How is that we've gotten big in a time when this should have suffered? And remember back at the beginning of the year when we talked about how getting out to shows was what was going to make us big, and then shows shut down, and we were like, holy shit, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. And then we're not sure if that's why we lucked into some of the interviews we've had. Like, God bless the Von Erichs for coming on. That was a huge get. Rich Palladino, Jay Freddy, guys that we've seen, Richard Holiday, guys that we've seen in the area have come on our show. We've gotten Al Snow, Barry Horowitz. We got Ricky Morton. I still can't believe we got Ricky.
Ken Anderson.
George South. Gary Michael Capetta.
And Dave? Another thing, Dave. Let me tell you, Dave.
God, Amber Nova, Paisley Knows Best. We could have had Casey Lennox, but slipped right through our fingers, bud.
Talk about that. Alex Zane, where you at, homie?
Check your DMs.
Check your DMs, bro.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get everybody, but... I mean, there are ways we have definitely overthrown our coverage, like done better than we should have done. And, I mean, Ross Foreman never got back to us, but still, we're coming for you, Ross Foreman.
Foreman, look out, baby. Look under those covers. Look under those seats. You might find us. Don't get you.
All right, so now we've talked enough about our 1 year. I mean, we should celebrate, but let's get on to the top tag teams list. And
let's talk about this. Hold on one second, though, Joe. Hold on one second.
Were you going where I was about to go?
Well, two things. I got two things I want to say. I think one of them could be where you want to go. One thing I just want to say is I talk off air all the time with Jake about this, and Mike and Zach, and for whatever reason, at least a lot of our loyal fan listeners love talking about tag team debates. I have tag team debates like all the time. So we might do tag team debates like Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. I know Jesse thinks we might have done this before. Jesse from New Hampshire, loyal listener. Joe said we didn't do it, and he said the kid's ass, but that's between you two. I'm going to let you figure that out.
To be fair, I hit enough of the Iranian tobacco that we could have talked about this last week, and I wouldn't remember it. I'd have a totally different list. I'd be arguing.
To be fair, you actually did text me today. Did we do Minnesota, which was last week's episode at the time we're taping it. So that is a shoot, folks.
See, true to form. We don't bullshit you here, folks.
No. Nothing but the truth, baby.
This is the real deal street life.
I want to talk to you about... Well, yeah, anyway, let's just transition here. Tag team. We're recording this on the day that we found out that Road Warrior Animal, Joe Laurinaitis, passed away.
Wait, what was his name?
Joe Laurinaitis.
Ah, shit. Yeah, you said it right that time.
Yeah, I said it fast the first time.
Yeah, you got me, homie.
Nothing but respect for the LOD. Yeah, man. I mean, so it was kind of ironic that we had this list going out today because obviously Road Warriors are one of the best tag teams of all time. Joe, I don't know everybody on your list, but spoiler, every list I've seen, which is at least 8 out of 11 of these probably, the Road Warriors are on. So obviously they're a big deal.
They are, and I mean, I hate to speak ill of the man the day he died, but I do want to say that the Road Warriors WWE DVD release, the matches, top notch. That documentary was garbage, and I was worried that the book was going to be garbage. I haven't read the book yet, but to me, it was the most WWE documentary I've seen, and it made me just want to take it out and watch the matches because the Road Warriors team, you cannot deny how huge they are. Mm-hmm. And like you said, they're on almost every list. They hold a
AWA, NWA, WWF, when all those promotions were actually a big deal, they dominated. They were at top of the food chain. And by the way, they were big in all Japan as well as New Japan. They were huge deals. They are synonymous with the War Games. They are just like main event.
The War Games, Daddy.
The Canadian Stampede, even from that In Your House, it was crazy. Where it was like the Hart family versus it was like Austin, Goldust, Shamrock, and who else? The Road Warriors. It's just like they're always just that main event level tag team.
And they are one of those teams that if you grew up in the 80s, whether you were a WCW fan or a WWF fan, you were a fan of either the Road Warriors or the Legion of Doom. I knew them as the Legion of Doom, but I had gotten like a bag of figures from my cousin who was a little bit older than me, and it ended up having the old Road Warriors toys. And they just had a different look. I mean, They had more or less the same face paint, but just the look they had in both the NWA and AWA was just menacing. And in the age of the network, where where they cut out a lot of that music, you lose them coming out to Black Sabbath's Iron Man.
Yep.
And I mean, they've got the signature pop, the Road Warrior pop. I don't think anybody else has taken that from them. And that's weird considering they came up in an era with Ric Flair where you would get that more extreme pop as well.
Absolutely. They were stars among stars in an era where it was not too uncommon to have like stars and trendsetters. Like they were just big deals even back then.
Yeah, and we're going to start with Zach St. John's list. And he's got Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, Road Warriors, British Bulldogs, and the Steiner Brothers.
Awesome list, man. I'll pick the Rock and Roll Express out of that list so far. I think they're like 8-time NWA World Tag Team Champions. I think they've been NWA World Tag Team Champions more than anybody. They've competed everywhere. They're absolutely one of the best teams, and they're still competing to this day. As I said to Ricky Morton when we interviewed him last year, I never thought growing up as a fan of the Rock and Roll Express in the early 80s, I would see him wrestle live 2019, 2 times.
Yeah, and he's still going strong, which is just insane to see. So who do you have for your next list or your first list?
I got Tim Hartford. Big old Tim Hartford daddy. He's got the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors on this list, the Dudley Boys, the Freebirds, the Brain Busters, and the Rockers. I'm going to take a little something here from some of the other people on this list. First off, the Dudley Boys, ECW, WWE, the WWE's version of WCW, Impact, and IWTT World Tag Team Champions. Plus, they were All Japan's World's Strongest Tag Determination League champions in 2005. And that tournament has had like the Funk, Brody, Snuka, Masawa, Kabashi, Gordy Williams, and so on. I mean, the Dudleys have basically been champions in every major promotion in the U.S. and Japan. This is a good list right there. You have the Freebirds, who are obviously big in UWF in Texas, and then with Jimmy Garvin, there would be tag team champs in WCW. The Brainbusters, the Rockers, who were AWA World Tag Team Champions and should have been WWE Tag Team Champions, but they decided to nullify that reign and never aired the match.
That's wild. Now my brother brings us our next list. He's got the Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, Rockers, the Young Bucks, Legion of Doom. Obviously, we're going to see Legion of Doom on a lot of lists. You notice my brother has Rock and Roll Express, the Rockers, the Young Bucks. And you can see how almost that wrestling archetype has been passed down through the years. Do you think Matt and Nick will have as long a reign as Ricky and Robert have?
No, just because that I don't think it's going to exist anymore. That's not the Bucks. You know what? In fact, let me read Mike Flynn's list next because that'll segue into some fans talk about the Bucks. Mike Flynn's list, number 1 was the Young Bucks. When you consider their impact and their success everywhere, match ratings, merch sales, and being a huge part of the AEW upstart, I think they're the best ever. All right, then he's got the Road Warriors, Edge and Christian, the Rock and Roll Express, and the Hardy Boys. Good to see ENC and the Hardy Boys on that list too, because that's another golden era of tag team wrestling.
On the face of it, that Young Bucks being the best ever, feels like a ridiculous statement.
Right.
But then when you consider where they've gotten to based on where they came from, they were part of a team that kicked off a company.
Right.
They've been champions around the world. They've done, you always want to argue the box office and who drew the house. it's hard to argue that the last couple of years of ROH might have been a Young Bucks show.
No, they're definitely a part of it.
It's like I almost want to argue with that on the face of it, but then when you break it down, you're like, they might be one of the best ever.
Yeah, no,
much to Jim Cornette's chagrin.
Yeah, no, they've changed the face of tag team. I think they're the standard bearer of tag team wrestling.
And do you think that's why that FTR Young Bucks match is so exciting, or is it just because they've built it up for so long?
I mean, there's no denying, they represent two different things, but that's part of it, right? That's part of the great rivalry. But then what's the other part of the great rivalry? The build, as you just said. And this is something we never thought we might see, and now it's just a question of when. When if they are lucky, one of them gets like a life-threatening or career-threatening injury at this point, and then we never see the match. Like, with ill will on anybody. But it seems like when people don't pull the trigger on matches right away, sometimes stuff happens too.
Yeah, you do run that risk, but geez, Dave, thanks for bringing such a downer on the episode. Let's bring it up with Scott from Voluntown. He's got the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, the Road Warriors, the Hardy Boys, the Dudleys, and honorable mention, Edge and Christian.
Yeah. Now, I saw that list. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did he also make a point that said that Condrey and Keaton were the Midnight Express he was referring to? You didn't write it down. It's okay.
I'm trying to think. Nope. Jake St. John. His Midnight Express was Eaton and Lane.
Right. His was Eaton and Lane.
And did Scott specify? Let's check the text.
Yeah, let's check that out.
Oh, wait. You sent me that list, so let's look that up.
He did not.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I had it right.
Yeah, you did. I'm going to give it to you. So we've talked before, Scott, I know he's a Condrey and Eaton guy, but I was wondering, I hope he made it specific, but Jake made it specific that it was Lane. And
Lane and Eaton, yep.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see that about the Midnight Express because there's two different factions. I'm a Lane and Eaton guy myself. Lane, I thought, really added something to that dynamic. He also came from another great team that we're probably not going to see on this list of fabulous ones, Steve Kern.
No, we're not going to see that.
No, I know absolutely wouldn't. They were big in Florida Championship Wrestling. They were big in UWF Mid-South with rivalries with the Sheep Herders and things like that. But I thought Lane really kind of just gave them another look, and they looked cooler, and Lane could talk a little bit better than obviously Bobby could. But, Midnight was great, man. They were the U.S. and World Tag Team Champions at the same time, which never happened back then. And their rivalry with the Rock and Roll Express and just all their matches. I mean, they really hold up. So, huge fans of those guys.
Now, I left out some notes from Zach St. John's list. He had the Dudleys as an honorable mention, Williams and Gordy.
Yeah.
And he loved Strikeforce as a kid. He wanted to buy their tights in PWI, which were basically just white underwear with a lightning bolt. I don't know.
You know what? He wants to include it. It's his right. All right, Zach. I want some white underwear with a lightning bolt on it too, my man.
And speaking of the St. John,
I had last night. Wink, wink. Anyway.
Oh, geez, that pre-show talk that y'all will never hear.
No, your damn business.
Dave told me quite possibly the wildest story ever, and I really think it set the mood for this recording. But speaking of St. John's, we got Jake St. John, author, friend of the show, co-contributor. He's got the Road Warriors, the Rock and Roll Express, who he hates them, but they deserve the spot. Midnight Express, Eaton and Lane, Arn and Tully, Hart Foundation, and the Jake rules in effect. He also has the Dudleys and ENC.
Yes, he does. That's a good combination. You know what? Before I get confused here, let me read off Randy's list because it is our 1 year, and we have let Randy off more than anyone on 531. We forgot his name. So, Randy, we're not forgetting you today, buddy. He's got the Road Warriors, Edge and Christian, the Rock and Roll Express, and I like this one, the Von Erichs, and Iron and Tully. Von Erichs were a great family, great dynasty. I'm assuming he's talking about the older Von Erichs. However, obviously,
who would be the most obvious tag team of the older one? Is he talking David and Kerry? Is he talking Kevin and Kerry?
Well, that's the thing.
Is he talking Mike and Chris?
Nobody talked about Mike and Chris ever.
Is he talking about Lance and Chris?
Nobody's talking about Lance. I mean, we got the Freebirds on this list, too. And we got, obviously, they're a three-man team, but you also had Gordy, was part of a three-man team. But we've had Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin. So, people throw names out there to Von Erich. They're a great three-man team. You could interchange a lot of them. So maybe not the names Joe mentioned. But
I mean, I would almost argue that Ross and Marshall have reinvented the Von Erich idea as a tag team, would you say? Like, when you say Von Erich's tag team, that's who I think of.
when you say the Von Erich, I still think of the legendary, like, their uncles and father. But Ross and Marshall are really exemplifying that old school style in a new school life. Like, I think they're like MLW's classic in a modern era white meat babyface. Like, they are good. I said this to them in the interview we had, I'm pretty sure. Where, like, when you go back to that old school interview with Kevin Von Erich and something the promo on the Freebird, this isn't Georgia versus Texas. This is decency versus filth. Like, that's what I think of Ross and Marshall. They are the decent human beings versus the filth of, like, Contra Unit or something.
Dave, you don't have a foot to stand on, but our next list comes from Jesse. He's got the Hardy Brothers. He's got the Motor City Machine Guns. He's got the Road Warriors, the Rockers, and Do It For Her, the team of Seth Rollins and Jimmy Jacobs. We had to look this up before the show. It's a Wrestling Society X team, and a surprising pick, but I will look into them.
Yeah, we're going to call in the question of the Von Erich. All right, cool, great list. Actually, most of those teams, and I'm sure they're a good team. I'm not going to put them in my top 5 without even seeing them. Unless I'm blown away. I'll go watch them tomorrow. I'll be like, Joe, I was wrong. Do it for her, baby. That's my number one.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like I'm a step younger than you, and Jesse is like 10 years younger than me. So we're dealing with a viewpoint that, you know, is outside of our purview. Like, I wasn't familiar with Wrestling Society X. I bought the box set just to see what it was all about, but that feels like something wrestling-wise that would miss our generation.
I got AJ's list here. He's got the Road Warriors, the Briscoes of Ring of Honor, Midnight Express, the British Bulldogs, and the Rainbow. It was interesting he made sure to include the Briscoes in this. And
I was surprised that it was the ROH Briscoes and Jack and Jerry.
I think he just tried to keep us on our toes.
Now, I'll bring the last list I got left is me. I got the Rock and Roll Express, the Steiner Brothers, obviously the Legion of Doom. I went with the Miracle Violence Connection, that's Williams and Gordy. And I had FTR, but I had to take them off and put on Midnight Express because I couldn't believe I left them off.
It's a good list, and I want to go right into my list just because I also had Williams and Gordy on my list. Guys, they are 5-time All-Japan Tag Team Champions. That Tag Tournament League in All-Japan I mentioned earlier, I think it's the world's strongest determination league. They were winners of that in 1991. They were the NWA/WCW Tag Team Champions. And I mean, they held both versions of the belt because NWA was actually in WCW at the time. They did an NWA tournament under the WCW umbrella, and Williams and Gordy on both. They were basically the team that came in and kicked the Steiner Brothers' ass, which was never done. Midnight Express are there. The Brain Busters, come on, Iron and Tully were masterful in WWE and NWA. Steiner Brothers are my all-time favorite tag team. They're making the list. I mentioned this in a debate I had with AJ recently that they just were innovator of tag team moves, whether it was the Frankenstein or there was the Bulldog off the top rope that Rick would hit, sometimes off the Scott's shoulders. And then there was also a move where, I don't know if you remember this, Joe, or saw this, they would do on prelim wrestlers. Rick would basically have like a prelim wrestler on his shoulders on the rope. Scott Steiner would climb the top rope, and then DDT, the preliminary wrestler, off of Rick Steiner's shoulders.
Oh, yeah, I believe I'm familiar with that. I've seen it a time or two. Scott Steiner can still hit that Frankensteiner to this day.
Yeah, I want to make sure I don't finish off my list. Number one on all our lists, the Road Warriors, LOD, Animal, and Hawk.
Now that we're going to a top 3, Road Warriors definitely move on.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Who is after them? I see a lot of Midnight Express, a lot of Rock and Roll Express, a lot of Brain Busters.
Well, let me look here, Joe.
You want to do Rock and Roll versus Midnight? And who do we line up for the other spot?
I'm seeing Edge and Christian on a few lists here, too.
Edge and Christian maybe versus the Dudleys?
Okay.
Or how about versus the Hardys? The Hardys are on a few lists.
You know what? Actually, I'll go Dudley. I think
Dudleys?
they had more success than other promotions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're just more of a tag team to me. In fact,
So if we're gonna pick Rock and Roll or Midnight, who do you pick?
who do you want to base this off? Who's the best pure tag team? As far as tag team in the ring goes, Midnight Express. As far as like success overall, Rock and Roll Express still doing it today, baby. Can't be stopped.
I feel like it's tough.
Still
You
doing it.
almost got to go with the Rock and Roll because they're still going to this day.
Right.
I mean, shit, it's going to be Ricky Morton versus Joey Janela at Joey Janela's Spring Break 4.
It is.
So, all right, Rock and Roll's got to move on. Sorry, Midnights.
Edge and Christian versus the Dudleys. All right, so I'm not biased. I am a much bigger fan of Edge and Christian. I enjoyed their work together. But when you look at overall through promotions, the Dudley Boys, man, oh man, I mean, WWE, ECW, Impact, Japan, to me, they move on.
I know, isn't it Conrad who jokes around that they're the most decorated tag team in tag team wrestling? But it's almost
kinda
true.
are. So that will be, we're going to have LOD, and then LOD's going around. And let's just talk about it right now. We're competing. The Dudleys and the Rock and Roll Express are competing right now for number 2 here. This is what it is, man. Ain't no doubt about it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not even just that Animal died today, but it was
We had
just
this list planned out before that, and we asked everybody's listed in advance, and everybody had the Road Warriors on.
and yeah, just their impact on tag team wrestling. They were one of the most feared tag teams in a sport that is predetermined. They instilled fear in their opponents because they presented such a real presentation.
How many preliminary wrestlers have spoken and said they didn't want to see their name on the booking sheet against Animal and Hawk?
God, I wonder if George South said it.
I know, I've kind of wondered about that.
You know what, Dave? I never would have wanted to do that.
I'm not taking no Doomsday Device. Dave, that's crazy. Dave?
As much as I like the Dudleys, I feel like Rock and Roll's got to get that number 2 spot just for how long they've done it. Their spot in the game, like they were NWA tag. Yeah, they were NWA tag champs last year.
Rock and Roll's here to stay.
So this is the first time we've done this the opposite way. We picked our number 1. We picked our number 2. And sadly, the Dudleys are our number 3. And
Not so sadly. They're in great company. Don't cry for the Dudleys boys tonight, all right, folks? This was a great list with a lot of great names.
yeah, and this, like we said, this is our 1-year episode. So if you really enjoy us and you want to support us, go find us on Patreon, Working Fans Podcast. You can buy a shirt, Working Fans Podcast, or Working Fans Wrestling Pod at gmail.com. We'll set you up. We've got the website. Check us out. We're at All Everything Entertainment. Guys, thank you for supporting us for 1 year, and we can't wait to get bigger with you.
Guys, thank you for listening to the 531 here on YouTube this week. If you like what you hear, you can always find us on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and on the Apple Podcast where you can subscribe and also give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate you listening. We want your feedback, 531, and if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, we also want you to let us know, and let us know what your 531 would be. Come up with a top 5 and let us know, and we'll tell you why you're wrong. And in order for us to do that, please contact us on Twitter. We're at Fans Working. Facebook page, Working Fans Wrestling Pod. Email workingfanswrestlingpod at gmail.com. It's very important that you actually contact us on these platforms because we want this to be your interactive place to talk wrestling.